Okay. Hello and welcome to everyone. Uh, I thank you for coming here. Uh, During these pandemic times, I hope everyone is safe and healthy. For those who don't know who I am, I'm Gautam. I work for as a senior security analyst for uh, Safe Security. Um, in today's session, we will be talking about zero trust security, building next generation enterprise security. Um, After this session, I'll be posting these slides on LinkedIn or Twitter, and feel free to ask questions, and please do not hesitate to contact. And the end of the session, we'll also have a questionnaire. So please put your questions on the question section. Okay, going ahead. So, as we all know, the organization that used to operate on premise have switched to working remotely as a result of the changes in working conditions and brought by the COVID or the pandemic situation. According to new reports, multiple cybercrime is on the rise, resulting in global losses of 6 trillion USD in 2021. Many cybersecurity ventures predicts that the global security market or the cybercrime cost would increase by 15% each year over the next 5 years, hitting around staggering 10.5 million or trillion per year by 2025. And the global zero trust security market is expected to rise from 19.6 billion USD in 2021 to 51.6 billion USD by 2026. In the post-COVID-19 scenario, the compound annual growth will be somewhere around 17.4% from 2021 to 2026. So when we talk about all these cybercrime, so there are some amount of cost that is included, which we need to consider, right? And the costs of cybercrime that we consider are these data loss and damage, as well as your money stolen, loss of productivity. Added to these, there's intellectual property theft, as well as theft of personal and financial data. These both are the example of embezzlement fraud. Furthermore, disrupting to this, there are certain extra costs that would come into picture, which is our investigative forensic data and system that has been compromised. We need to restore it, delete it. Those damages has to be recovered, and there is also an added damage to the reputation of the company, right? And so going ahead, when you talk about in the whole session, we'll be talking about a couple of things, which would be what is a zero trust, security model, and how it works. What are the comparison between the current model, which is our traditional perimeter model, to the zero trust model, and what are the approaches that has to be taken to implement zero trust, and what are the benefits, and to plan all these, what would be the exact roadmap to transition from the traditional based architecture to the zero trust architecture. So these are the things that we will be talking in today's session. And go ahead. So the first topic that we will be talking about is zero trust architecture or security model, right? And when we talk about this, the first thing that comes to my mind is that many digital transformations in innovation initiatives are forcing companies to reconsider their data breach or enterprise architectures, due to which the data breaches are on the rise, and users are becoming more mobile, and data and applications are being migrated to the cloud. Business now must consider the perimeter based. Are we supposed to consider the perimeter based or a traditional security model or not? or is it a correct approach an enterprise has to follow? Uh, a business, is this a good idea for a business to, implement the zero trust model? So this is always a question that anyone would ask, right? So let's go ahead and find out, whether traditional model is better or zero trust model is better, and if we are implementing the zero trust model, and why is it so? So enterprise security is difficult, and due to the complexity of IT and application infrastructure, the breadth and velocity of user access, and of course the adversarial nature of the information activity. So it also, because most enterprises network are far too open by not enforcing the principles of least privileges at both network and application levels. This makes or leaves the organizations extremely vulnerable to remote attacks or any kind of attack, right? This is true that both internal network and external network, or the public facing, internet facing remote access services like VPN, the later which are exposed to the internet, are in high risk. So in today's threat landscape, you would never design a system, despite the traditional security networking systems, which are very vast, and this particular perimeter model or traditional security model perpetuate to this. So what you might ask me, what is a traditional security model, which has been, I'm talking about that from a long time now. So unlike a traditional on-premise deployment modes, the cloud-based security solution provide a cost-effective approach to enhancing security for enterprise across various verticals of industries. Uh, Pricing becomes a major concern when we're adopting to a new technology or security solutions. So here, the cloud-based security solution plays a very important role, and that too over the on-premise security solutions. Uh, the growing virtualization of industries, cloud computing adoption are dividing or driving the demand for cloud zero-based trust security solutions in varieties of countries are being implemented. Furthermore, cloud-based deployments of zero trust security solution can assist an organization and reducing the cost associated with it might be expensive hardware, it might be some softwares, it can be storage, power. This also lowers the number of IT personnel required to maintain and monitor the network. So this kind of eliminates the IT maintenance costs that we can tell. And cloud deployments for ideal is very ideal for small and mid-sized business, which typically have a limited budget for protecting their critical assets from cyber attacks. So answering to all these, now what is exactly a zero trust or a traditional perimeter model? First, let's understand the traditional model. So it's a security model based on the concept of castle and moat. And castle and moat security model focus on preventing the access from outside the network while trusting every users inside the network. Okay. Uh, so this security setup has several flaws in it. The security setup of castle and moat concept. Companies no longer keep the data in a single or a contained area, but rather in a large distributed systems that that frequently include cloud vendors. Because of mobile workforce and bring your own device policies, IoT, and your cloud adoption, it is no longer safe to trust users and devices that are already on the network. Nothing can stop an attacker moving laterally through the network once has gained the access to the network already, right? So employees and customers can access the application from varieties of location using the perimeter based model. As a result, the castle and moat concept has no longer have the efficiency to protect the enterprise level network. So seeing into this, uh, as an attacker from the external point of view or the internal point of view, uh, he follows a life cycle or an attack kill chain that we can talk about, a cyber kill chain, right? So when we talk about this, what is the attack life cycle that we need to understand? It is a series of events that an attacker goes through in order to successfully infiltrate the network and exfiltrate the data from the network. So the good news is that among all these chaos is that if we are able to block one of these stages, uh, we'll be able to protect the company's network and data from the attack. So as we see, we see a seven-staged attacks life cycle that an attacker goes through. So under reconnaissance in this stage, attacker will be planning a crystal clear plan, conducting a lot of research, identifying and selecting who the target is, and employing social engineering tactics to extract as many as information that he can leverage to. These criminals or the attackers also look for network vulnerabilities and services and applications so that he can exploit and try to get inside the network. So during these phases, weaponization and delivery also plays an important role. uh, the next attacker decides which method to implement, and how is he gonna send out that malware or embed that malware into the file, and how to capture the target's specific interest. So these are covered under weaponization and delivery. uh, and once he has all these information, then the next step that he would do is the exploitation. Once the attacker have gained inside access to an organization, they can attack the victim's host and eventually take control of the target machine, right? And once he has that, the next method that he what the next process he would do is installation. Attackers will attempt to establish a privileged operation, which includes installing the rootkit or conducting a privilege escalation and establish a persistent connection. So when he has all these above system connection, the next thing that he would do is command and control. So he would establish a command channel back through the internet somewhere his remote system is placed, and he tries to exfiltrate the data from the infected machine to the server somewhere in the remote. And among all these, objective is that what are the actions that attacker takes, and the motive is not only about profit or money. Their motives could include critical damaging the critical infrastructure, or data exfiltration. Sometimes it'll be also defacing the web, and to an extent of installation of fear or extortion, right? So once he has all these things, this shows that how a perimeter based architecture is vulnerable to kind of attacks. So how do we overcome this? We can overcome this by implementing the zero trust security model. And how is it gonna help us? We'll be looking into it. So what is the zero trust security model? So it is based on the principle of maintaining strict access controls and not trusting anyone by default, including those who are already inside the network perimeter. And it's also called as the perimeterless security. This concept is based on the belief that the organization should not automatically trust anybody or anything inside or outside their perimeter, and must instead verify everything attempting to connect to their system or the network before granting access. So a zero trust model here, the information security throws out the old castle and moat concept, which had organizations focused on defending their perimeters while assuming that everything inside their network did not pose any threat and thus safe for access. So this is gonna eliminate all those distrust on it. So to go ahead and implement the zero trust architecture, the there are certain assumptions that we need to consider. So the assumptions are that trust no one. It means that the central idea behind zero trust is that there are attackers both inside and outside the network. The system should never automatically trust users or device. So every access attempt is a threat until the verification says the otherwise, right? User re-authentication is a very critical zero trust rule. And when a user access the system, security controls should verify the user's right to the resource. So on a whole, it's like trust no one or trust nothing until and unless they are authorized and authenticated. So the next point would be assumption would be our least privilege access model. Allow users only as much as they need to perform their duty. Limiting the access reduces each user's exposure to sensitive network components and reduces the attack surface. An attacker cannot gain the access or a large amount of data through a single compromised system. So this can be achieved by one more assumption of segmentation of network. Network segmentation is kind of a practice dividing a network into smaller chunks or smaller zones with separate security controls for each zones. Without additional authorization, a user or a program with access to one zone does not have the right to access the other. So individual workloads are protected by using a strict access control policies by enabling the segmentation of network. So in the event, let's say in the event of breach, network segmentation restricts the lateral movement and increases the system resilience. And multi-factor authentication is kind of a vital assumption that we need to consider and has to be implemented. This is to verify their identity, basically. And MFA, as we all know, requires to provide more than one piece of evidence. So the common MFA that is used or in day-to-day business of an enterprise is that are two-factor authentication. Right, user must enter his password and he gets another code. Then only a person would be able to log into a system, and this particular code is sent to another device. So MFA, multi-factor authentication, plays a vital role in any zero trust security scheme because it prevents the brute force attacks. Right, and device access control, it's kind of to maintain the strictly controlled access policies to implement the zero trust, right? So by doing this, we can keep track of a number of different devices attempting to connect to the network, and every access attempt should be validated. So that is what device access control talks about, which on overall reduces the attack surface. And by doing this, the next stage would be, our assumption would be our monitoring and logging everything, right? So zero trust requires connections or a continuous monitoring of users, devices, activities. Every network call, file access, and email should be monitored. for malicious activity. There are a lot of tools and automated tools that in the market which helps us to achieve this. By monitoring and logging, what are the things that we can achieve is, if there is any sign of data breach, user accounts that are dangerous, if there is any malicious behavior patterns, there is any flaws in the system, there is a kind of an attack which is happening, for an example, ransomware. So these can be monitored and detected at the earliest by logging and monitoring process. And these different kind of identification becomes very useful if you have an automation tool which gives you a dashboard and you have access to everything together. So real-time monitoring becomes very vital role, and it also reduces the breakout time. So what is the breakout time? It's like once an attacker breaches in and he starts to move laterally inside the network, this time is called as the breakout time. So breakout time can be reduced by monitoring and logging. So the last assumption that we do is though we implement any security model, even in the zero trust environment, uh, data breaches are unavoidable due to might be for human errors. So an enterprise and organization should be always prepared for such case scenarios. So we need to be prepared for an attack. How do we do that? By reducing the blast radius and keeping the lateral movement restricted to a network in is minimum. So these two can be achieved by segmentation, network segmentation, right, and proper policies. And let's say there is a breakout, and do you have the plan of backup data or redundant data, so that, or a redundant system, so that you can divert the traffic through another loader? And do you have a proper developing response strategies, or proper incident and response systems should be in place? Then that is when we can overcome these data breaches. So to implement all these, so they came up with this zero trust architecture model, and this particular zero trust architecture model has this unique features, or kind of a lot of features have been provided to modern enterprises or corporate systems. It verifies the access request before allowing access to any assets, right? And so when we provide or grant access rights, there are certain aspects that is considered, parameters that we can tell. So what are the different attributes that are considered for an access right? Providing an access right as user entity, identity, and endpoint hardware configuration details, version of your firmware, version of the operating system, patching levels. Again, here the patching levels are of different types, which is L1 and L2. L1 patching, we are talking about the benchmarks, standard recommended security patches, and we have L2 patches, which talks about your defense in depth, more advanced settings for each of the controls that has been configured on your system. And another attribute we talk about is weaknesses and vulnerabilities of a system, and what kind of application that has been installed, what kind of login users are there. So these are different attributes that are considered for verifying an access right. So when security control allow a user or a device to enter the network, the access is not permanent, and the system verifies the user identity on a regular basis to ensure that the system is always protected on both inside and outside the network. So zero trust security policies are closely tied to workloads, and they try to maintain the close proximity to the assets as much as possible. As a result, the protection is across different environments, and it moves with the system, and there's no loss of protection there. And Zero trust is just isn't about prevention, right? When a hacker reaches in to the perimeter, exploits or bugs or bribes an insider, he or she can gain limited access to valuable data, just because we have previously set the right policies. The system, when this happens, the system detects and responds to abnormal behavior before the attackers can have a chance to cause harm, more damage to the organization. Zero trust incorporates a range of principles. There are a lot of principles that we need to understand and it implements, which we already spoke about. As one of the thing is our multi-factor authentication. So the rest would be our identity and access management, system orchestration. We have our analytics. We have encryptions. File system permissions are also a vital principle. Then we have our next generation endpoint security technologies. We have these all EDRs and EVPs in place. So these are the principles that are incorporated to go ahead and understand the architecture, how it works. So implement zero trust architecture, there are a couple of points and approach to understand this. First thing, as we have learned about from starting, is that review, authorization, and authentication of access of every user is very important. And we need to protect the data and enterprise asset protection. It might be using your third-party tools. It might be EDRs, EPPs, anything, right? If you have the right response and detection, you are in the better place. Operating safely to be successful in the distributed system. And another point that we also learned about is threat analysis and monitoring. This gives us a lot of information, where, when is the attack happening, what kind of an attack is happening, who has the weaker account, and where, how do we stop these. So these can be achieved by threat analysis and monitoring. And once we have all these, the main important point that we need to consider is the compliance standards or the compliance. So every compliance standard or the industry that it follows has a different set of policies and set of rules that they need to look into. So if the above points are being followed, I see that all the compliance standards are actually met. So there won't be any breach of any standard laws, anything. Okay, how do we implement this zero trust framework? Might be a big question to us, right? And is there a case study to understand the zero trust framework? So Google's Beyond Corp is a well-known case study or a company which we can understand zero trust implementation. They were able to accomplish this, where their users, employees, the corporate users used an access proxy rather than directly connecting to the corporate network, corporate office. What is an access proxy? It's an identity-based proxy, that authenticates and authorizes users based on their privileges and rules and policies set. This would provide users with indirect access to the application rather than direct access. And this restrictions indirectly provide a strong security system. So once a user manages to clear the access proxy, then only he'll be able to access the application or database. And every other expiry time, they have been again validated, so that there's a proper cycle of inside and outside threat eliminated. So what are the kind of policies that we see? And the policies are also set based on different conditions, right? So the different conditions are what kind of employees and partners are there, Are they trusted devices? Are they compliant? Is it a physical device or a virtual device? What kind of applications and authentication methods are used? And when it comes to policies or controls, it's all about allowing and blocking access, restricting or limiting access. Require of multi-factor authentication. Passwords can be reset. So these can be implemented across cloud and on-premise devices. So when we talk about all these, what is zero trust actually trying to protect? So zero trust has a lot of features, as we talked about, but these are the five elements that it tries to protect mainly. So it's our data, network, people, workload, and devices. So these zero trust is ideal for protecting environment with a mix of public and private cloud, SaaS application, DevOps pipelines. Uh, when it comes to data, zero trust try to establish clear guidelines. Where the data resides, who has access to it, and what is the sensitivity or stale data. When it comes to network, the it keeps the attackers out of the network, and it tries to segment and isolate, or provide a strict restrictions on the network. People, humans are usually the weakest link in any security strategy. Right. So zero trust, security controls, monitor and limits how user access resources, both inside and outside the network. As a result, the phishing or bad passwords or malicious insider risk would be restricted or lessen at least a bit. Workloads. So zero trust model secures the entire application and the backend software stack by strict controls and policies. And when it comes to the devices, every device connected is to be considered as the potential entry point for an attacker. So with separate controls by zero trust, it tries to kind of isolate and tries to protect each device in the infrastructure. So, what is the use and or the benefits of implementing the zero trust, right? So the first point would be our data breach prevention. So one of the most important benefits, which talks about how data is a common target and what typically a hacker would aim at in the data. So it might be health information that has been encrypted, or payment card details, the right to intellectual properties, right? So at enterprise level, zero trust is the most effective method to protect the data. And accessing information, necessitative accessing and verification is important, and for every valuable data. Reduce business risk. The zero trust model performs exceptionally well when it comes to detecting suspicious behavior or malicious behavior. All users here or the applications, cannot communicate with the system until they are being verified. So this reduces the risk by detecting network activities or malicious network activities. And better cloud and container protection. It's required to ensure that security of the cloud and container environments has a proper visibility by the zero trust model. Zero trust prevents it from communicating anywhere on the system. More business speed and agility. Frequently, uh, the causes of business disruption or operation to slow down, right? It might be because of block boards or shutdown systems. This kind of prevents the employees or user from accessing the data, so wherein they reduces the business speed, right? So when it comes to better flexibility, since zero trust provides a lot of features, teams frequently here sometimes have to relocate to different applications and IT services across infrastructure. So in zero trust model, using the zero trust model, it becomes very easy to move assets between environment uh, and security policies at different location, and we can also relocate those policies to different location, right? And so these are the benefits that by implementing zero trust architecture, right? Uh, so many companies might ask, okay, fine, we know what is zero trust and what are the benefits of zero trust. So what is the important thing that has to be considered for planning or implementing the zero trust, right? So zero trust. There are key takeaways that one needs to consider before implementing the zero trust, right? So one should be very familiar about who are your users, because one of the policies says trust no one, and what kind of assets are we trying to protect? Are they being authenticated or authorized? What are the different types of transactions? Protect How do you protect your users from different malicious activities? What are the different kind of security software that has been implemented, right? So if we can consider these aspects, what are the challenges and key success factors, and how do we resolve these, then implementing of zero trust becomes much easier, and transition also would be much easier, right? This can be achieved by a proper planning, a proper roadmap across, right? So a roadmap, when we say, it can be laid out in terms of feasibility, right? So feasibility can be in terms of quarterly, half yearly, yearly. If you have a proper plan, then implementing the above points, considering the assumptions, it becomes very easy for an organization to implement zero trust, right? So when there is a transformation happening from a traditional perimeter-based security to a perimeter-less zero trust security model, one needs to have a proper visibility. If there is a policy migration that needs to be done, then that has to be considered based on the priority. Then let's say you need to build the new policies, then you need to start defining the types of controls that and every access user need to have, right? And once everything is there, then how do you enforce these security policies? So when we talk about so as we know that there are a lot of assumptions that we need to create a proper implementation of zero trust, right? So to do this, we need to consider certain parameters or stages that we need to go through, right? So one of the stages are user grouping, wherein we need to understand what are the different types of users, what are the test users, internal users, external users. Once you have these, you have to start grouping them, and each of these users will be given a different access policies, right? So the next stage would be application pre-check stage. What kind of these are the set of questions that everyone needs to try to answer before transitioning from the uh, traditional network to the zero trust, right? We need to understand what kind of an application it is, what kind of access is required for the application, where is it hosted, and how frequently these need to be updated, or what kind of environment it needs to be deployed on. So when all these things are set, as we talked about previously, the user first connects to the access proxy. So what kind of inbound or outbound policies need to be set? Are the MFA done? How is the access rights? What kind of access rights needs to be given? Because it is not mandatory that a user needs to access only through password. There are different set of policies that one can set, right? And we need to have test lab enrollment stages. There is a security upgrade stage, patching levels of security if there is any vulnerabilities by found out using vulnerability assessment, pen testing assessments. Performance upgrade needs to be done. Let's say they are using certain softwares or applications. If they are running out of features, then they need to be updated. And once these are in picture, then the external user enrollment stage. Who are the external entities that are allowed to connect to the internal network? Those has to be listed out. And these are certain set of questions that one needs to ask before implementing the zero trust architecture. And if you have answers to all these questions, then you can plan it, stage by stage. It, as I told you previously, it might be quarterly, half yearly, yearly, or year on year basis. Right. Okay. I hope I was able to convey as many as information that I know about zero trust, and the forum is open for further questions. And if you have any doubts, you can ask me. Go ahead. Okay, I guess I don't have any more questions here. Thank you, guys. I hope everyone is safe. Be safe. Thank you. See ya.